Kia ora everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing what is often rated as the best ski area in New Zealand, Mount Hutt. Despite its relatively small size, Mount Hutt has a lot to unpack. In this video, we'll be discussing all that you need to know in order to maximize your day skiing Mount Hutt. Because we have so much to unpack, this episode is split into two parts, with this part discussing the lower mountain and part B discussing the upper half. So without any further ado, let's begin an Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Mount Hutt. Now, Mount Hutt is rated as the best in New Zealand for a reason. It typically has some of the best snow conditions around. Its facilities are modern, the vibe is incredibly friendly, it's easily accessible, and it grooms a higher percentage of its runs than other fields, but still has plenty of good off-piste options. However, Mount Hutt also has a downside. It is nicknamed Mount Shut due to how often it closes for wind. Needless to say, it can get extremely cold and windy, especially at the summit. If you plan to park in a mountain car park, be sure to check for a carpool priority day the day before you go. They've got some weird rules about who qualifies to park in the top car park, which they'll outline on the website. Additionally, beware that any unattended equipment, especially bags, left in the lodge may be removed by a staff member, so it's not the same as saving seats in the United States. As you exit left off the top of the Summit 6, on the left is a hot tub. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's an experience run by a company called Alpine Spas. This is taken directly from their website. A key component of any uniquely memorable experience is a healthy sprinkling of spontaneity. That's why we've made this spa pool accessible to any Mount Hutt mountain goer. You don't have to pay an extra fee or book your spot or have any friends in high places. All you need to do is bring a towel, brave the elements as you change into your swimwear, and before you know it you'll be enjoying one of New Zealand's most unique experiences currently on offer. So yeah, have at it guys. Finally, one disclaimer about the trail map. Older trail maps had much more detail and specific names for certain off-piste areas that do not appear on the current map. I'm not sure why, but for example, this area ambiguously labeled South Face used to be broken down into 4 different runs on older trail maps rather than all just grouped together under one name. I will discuss things by their old labels by showing where they would be on the new map. I like the geometry of the new map as it shows things much better as a whole, but I wish it had all the same labels as the old map. Alright, let's start this thing off by discussing towers. Now, the Towers chair very well might be the longest chairlift ride anywhere in New Zealand. It is an absolute pain. For the record, this entire section of the script was written while riding on the Towers lift. However, there is one big upside to Towers, that being that with the exception of powder days, it stays relatively empty. Something not depicted on the trail map is that there is a mid-station where you can load the chairlift. It is located right at the bottom of Back Paddock here. If the triple chair is not running, then you will have to take a conveyor to get back to the base area from Back Paddock. Also coming into the Towers mid is Wailago, which is a typically ungroomed fun little natural gully and the lowermost part of the narrow groomer International Express. Another way to access the mid-load is directly from the parking lot, so if you have a pass and equipment and are all set, it's also not a bad choice. When Summit gets real busy, Towers is my go-to area. Do beware, additionally, that from mid-Towers you'll most likely end up at the mid-station, although it is very possible to traverse back to Highway 72 in order to make it a one-lift lap. Within the True Towers pod, the snow quality typically isn't too great due to its relatively low elevation. As such, I'm not a huge fan of the off-piste and lower triple as a whole, except on storm days. The main and only groomer in the Towers pod is International. International is a fairly steep but wide run with lots of fun rollers. It gets weird ice chunks from grooming, but it's overall not too bad, and is much less busy than other groomers at the field. At the bottom, it does narrow up into a road, the first part of which can sometimes be a bit flat, so maybe keep up a touch of speed on the bottom pitch. Just lookers left of International is an area called Muesli Bowl, and above it an area formerly known as the Ramp. They are separated by a big rock, and both are off-piste bowl-like exit paths from South Face. Both Wilson's Way and this looker's left section of Log Chute start as more of bowl-type terrain before flowing into a big gully. Be careful, as there is a creek at the bottom of the gully, which is the last thing you want to catch your skis on. This looker's right section of Log Chute has a tight chute option on either side or a main saddle that is quite exposed. The skier's left chute is the narrowest, running directly under the lift. It often requires some short straight line. Any of the 3 routes funnel into a nice open bowl that often has lots of exposed rocks to avoid. Bondi's drop starts from the other end of the main car park and traverses across to another small saddle from which it then enters the same bowl. This entire lower Triple area, with the exception of International, is a fantastic less skied area for advanced off-piste skiing and riding when conditions are good. But, as we discussed, those days are somewhat rare. There is also sometimes a groomed road starting from the same place as Bondi's that switches back the whole way down to the Triple. I've never done it, so I'm unsure of whether it's open to the public or not, but it is there. There are also some pretty significant chutes straight off the parking lot above Bondi's here, but I'm pretty sure they're permanently closed, and if not permanently, at least a vast majority of the time. Now let's jump over to the main base and talk about the Norwest pod. Norwest never seems to get any big queues, but of course that's the result of installing an 8-seater as your bunny hill lift. It is a nice change from all the other ski fields with massive queues for the beginner area. This whole area can be quite convoluted, so be careful. First off, International Express isn't truly in the Norwest pod, as its unsigned entrance is well above the top terminal of Norwest. It is a very narrow road that can get quite congested and is extremely difficult to overtake on. I only ever take International Express if I'm going to International proper, in Lower Triple. Highway 72 is not directly accessible from Chairbowl and Fascination, and that's for a reason. So to access Highway 72, you'll have to either take Norwest or traverse in front of the top terminal of the lift. Highway 72 is the main green run on the mountain. It is, of course, pretty busy, and it's not overly wide for a beginner run. As such, they are huge sticklers about speed, and there's almost always an employee regulating speed and pulling passes if they have to. Back Paddock is one of my favorite runs at the field. You'll rarely hear me say that I like a green that much, but Back Paddock is just so incredibly fun. Hardly anybody knows it exists, and it's a super fun, mellow, winding groomer that meanders its way to the tower's mid. It can be accessed from both Highway 72 and International Express. Another nice thing about the layout of Mount Hutt is that the 8-seater that is never busy also serves all the parks, preventing Summit from getting unnecessary extra traffic. Inside Leg has a bunch of different trails, each one with a different size progression of jumps, features, or both. It's not the biggest or baddest park in New Zealand, but it can hold its own. It's actually quite impressive how they're able to integrate the features despite the local geography not being particularly easy to work with. If you head as if you're entering the park but then hang left, you'll be on Lex's Way, a sometimes groomed, sometimes ungroomed Little Blue. When it's groomed, it can get quite icy, and when it's ungroomed, it often develops small moguls. Hood's Hollow is relatively similar to Back Paddock. It's a narrow, winding green groomer that starts off by going through a short tunnel under Lex's. I don't like it as much as Back Paddock, however, because it is generally busier. Exhibition Bowl, accessed by traversing skiers left at Hood's Hollow's first curve, has some baby cliffs and chutes at the top. They're super short, taking no more than a couple of turns to descend. Beyond those, it's just some pretty steep off-piste. Broadway is the main groomer in the Norwest pod, and it also carries most of the traffic returning from the upper mountain. But yet, despite all that, you'll still have plenty of space due to how vastly wide they groom it. The final pitch into the base area can be a bit icy, but overall it's a fantastic classic blue cruiser. On the skier's right side, just after cresting a small hill, there's an often overlooked groom strip that goes down and connects to Hood's Hollow. It doesn't serve much of a purpose other than just being an alternative to Lower Broadway, as Hood's Hollow then comes back together with Broadway partway down that final pitch I was just describing. Johnny Dole stays a bit higher on the skier's left side of Broadway and is another big wide blue groomer. It also comes back together with Broadway before beginning that final pitch into the lift terminals. Alright, we're going to cut it off there. Go check out part B now, all about the upper mountain and what makes Mount Hutt famous. As always, please leave any questions down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.